I think it's really interesting for anyone to actually reflect back and say, what is influencing my life and my behaviors and how I think about things and how I go about things? Because when we understand what drives us in the deeper sense of things, we understand ourselves better, and we can become more deeply connected with ourselves and really create some super cool things in the world. Think that if we are doing something for ourselves, that we are being selfish, and we label it that. If I lay down and take a nap, I'm selfish. I need to be cleaning the house or doing something of service for someone. I used to do this all the time. I did not take a break. I did not rest, because it's like when the kids were little, it'd be, okay, well, the kids are little, they're taking their nap. Their nap time is my opportunity. And I actually spent a lot of that time either writing, or I would spend that time supporting Steve in his real estate business. What I have discovered is that I need rest. Welcome back, or welcome to the Conscious Investor Podcast, the show where we talk about health, mindset, and wealth building strategies. You're here. This is episode number 564. It's so deep into the podcast. If this is your first time coming to the show, welcome to the show. And for everyone who has been through, walking with the show from the very get-go, from the conception of the show as Ask Me How I Know, Multifamily Stories of Struggle to Success, to the rebrand to the Conscious Investor, I'm so grateful that you are here once again. And so, it's a Mindset Monday, and this is a day where we get to hang out together. Today, we're talking about your inner voice and learning to listen to your inner voice. Trust me, I have a lot of experience on learning how to do this. We are actually going to tackle why we struggle to listen to our inner voice. We're going to talk about reconnecting to that inner voice. And most importantly, hey, how do we actually practically connect with our inner voice? Like, what are the actual strategies that we can do? Because, I like to take action, and I think you do too, Conscious Investor. So before we dive on into today's episode, I just wanted to remind you that the Conscious Investor Growth Summit is like 35 days away at max. I can't believe it's right around the corner. And this is such a powerful opportunity for you to break bread with other conscious investors. This event truly is an experience. There is not another event like it. And because there's not another event like the Conscious Investor Growth Summit, I've definitely struggled in marketing it and messaging and things like that, because how do you explain that you're going to come and it's a transformation, that this isn't just about being an investor, right? A lot of people are like, oh, I'm not an investor. Well, actually, we are all investing in creating the very most powerful lives that we can possibly create, right? And so this isn't just about investing in wealth building strategies. This isn't just about real estate investing. This is about investing in your life. This is about investing in your physical health, in your relational health, in your spiritual health. We have experts that are speaking on every topic, literally, physiologically, like how are we taking our body? I mean, like, we have every topic covered. But something that I love even more than that is that we're going to break bread. Food brings humans together. That's just the reality of it. And so I'm so excited that with every ticket, so you don't have to buy some fancy ticket. There isn't an upcharge. Every single ticket includes some type of networking mixer event that is offsite every single day. And that's for everybody, because this is an everybody kind of event. And when I say everybody, it maxes out at 150 people. So this is not a huge event. So if you like the huge events, hey, great, knock your socks off, go to the huge events. But if you are looking to find people that you deeply connect with and to create relationships that are going to outlast a single event, this is for you. This is where people go to level up. You can head on over to consciousinvestorgrowthsummit.com or click the link in the show notes below to pick up your tickets today. All right. So let's go ahead and let's dive on into this topic of listening to your inner voice. So often, and I'm going to put this caveat right here at the beginning. Okay. This topic of listening to our inner voice is really something that I've had to do some work on. And here's why. conscious investor, that my faith is central to my life. You know that I love Jesus. You know that has always been my entire life. And and by way of that, there are some innocent byproducts, right? In the world that I grew up in, it was, you don't really listen to yourself, you listen to God. And so, as I myself have grown in my own relationship with God, it has really also allowed me to see how much agency God gives us in our life and the opportunity to co author our life with God. Here's one of my favorite ways of expressing this idea, because I know that there are some of you who share my faith right now as an adult, and some of you who maybe have an experience in your past of being in church like settings. And maybe this is something that you struggled with. And maybe you don't go to church because you're like, I don't want that in my life. I have a voice. I want to listen to my voice. And so but I'm hoping that this just provides maybe another perspective and some clarity on the topic. And this is from one of the teaching pastors at the church, or teaching leaders. I don't know what they call them. But he was teaching one Sunday morning, and he said when he had 3 kids living at home, they had the backyard, and the kids would go out in the backyard, and the kids would run around. And he and his wife would not hover over the kids. They wouldn't tell the kids, now you play in the sandbox. They wouldn't tell the kids, now you can ride your bike. They wouldn't do things like that. The kids could go and play in the backyard. The backyard was a safe space for them to be. And they could go and they could do anything in the backyard, right? All of the kid-like things. Hey, there's a tire swing, go in the sandbox, climb up in the fort, all of the fun things. And the parallel that this teacher made was that the world is ours. like God said, hey, here you go. And you don't need to ask me for everything. Know that this is kind of like your playground. Do what is right. Do things that are good, right? And you don't need to ask permission for every single thing. And so there's a lot of intuition that God created us with. And so when we think about, or I should say, when I started thinking about the concept of listening to my inner voice, it was kind of like, well, I don't know about this. And this did not come, by the way, this inner voice concept is not correlated with the teaching of this pastor at my church, just to be abundantly clear on that. But it has that same concept. I want to just borrow from that concept that we have agency. We don't just sit in our car at a train track and say, Lord, please don't let that train that's coming, not hit me. We actually move our car. We actually drive out of the way, and we take action, right, on the things that we can see. And that is our agency. And that is us paying attention to our surroundings. And so I want to draw upon that further to say, we have a voice. We have an inner voice that we get to listen to. And for me personally, being connected, what I like to call vertically aligned with God, allows me to have almost like an enhanced voice. It's like, okay, well, hey, are we cool? Like, it's almost this internal conversation that's really cool. And so there's some co-creation going on. So I know I just spent a few minutes diving into that, and maybe that was more for me than for you, but I think it's really fascinating. And if you don't share my faith, or you weren't raised with any strong belief system, I think it's really interesting for anyone to actually reflect back and say, what is influencing my life and my behaviors and how I think about things and how I go about things? Because when we understand what drives us in the deeper sense of things, we understand ourselves better. And we can become more deeply connected with ourselves and really create some super cool things in the world. Now, one of the things that happens is that as we start getting older, and we leave those college days behind, and we thought back in college, wow, life was so busy and we're so tired, and then wow, we get married and we have kids and we're starting careers and we're moving across the country to different places and doing, like, there's so much flooding in of opportunities that are all so good into our lives, but learning how to navigate that is really difficult for a lot of us. And so what happens is that we subordinate our inner voice. We just dismiss it. Like, it's just that constantly override. You've heard me talk about like red line living, where we're redlining our life. If you were driving your car and you're driving a 5-speed like I used to back when, it's like the RPMs are just like buried in its redlining. Like we can't redline our life. And too often that is exactly what we are doing. And so we dismiss ourselves and we're like, no, I don't have time for that. My kids are little, they need my full attention. No, I don't have time for that. I'm, navigating my career and growing my whole career and my investments and such. And so we keep just hitting that override button. And the more we do that, we are just desensitizing ourselves to hearing ourselves. And pretty soon, and it's already a quiet whisper, but as that whisper, or as we continue to override that whisper becomes quieter and quieter and quieter and quieter, right? And so a lot of times, part of what happens in those middle years of life is things we might be able to catch our breath a little bit, and we start to realize, whoa, I'm disconnected. Maybe I feel dysregulated. So that term dysregulation isn't unique to people on the spectrum. Every single one of us has moments where we are dysregulated. Most people don't recognize it. So here's some of the other draws as to why we struggle to hear ourselves. A lot of times we have social expectations. And so we also have the cultural conditioning. And part of that cultural conditioning, I will say, like, any type of church setting can have its own culture. So what I was sharing with you earlier, that's part of a cultural setting that was influencing my ability to hear myself, right? We can have family narratives that hold us down. I remember I've shared this before, and my brothers are all awesome people, so hear this correctly. However, I remember as a kid, this is an appropriate brother and sister moment, one of my brothers saying, "Don't sing the song if you don't know the words." And it just smushed little Julie, and she just stopped singing. And so that's one of those things where it's a family narrative. It's something that happened. It was an experience. And honestly, that's a benign thing. That's something that happened between siblings. That's a normal situation, but it had a longer term impact in my life. And so it's really important that we take time to actually kind of do some investigating and to see what are some of these stories that are being feature films in my life and that are distracting me from what I am truly created to do and capable of doing in life. Sometimes, oh, just relationships. And so we think that if we are doing something for ourselves, that we are being selfish. And we label it that. If I lay down and take a nap, I'm selfish. I need to be cleaning the house or doing something of service for someone. I used to do this all the time. I did not take a break. I did not rest because it's like when the kids were little, it'd be, okay, well, the kids are little, they're taking their nap. Their nap time is my opportunity. And I actually spent a lot of that time either writing, or I would spend that time supporting Steve in his real estate business. I always found something to do during that nap time that was not restful. It was very, very productive. It's like, I got to get ahead. This is my opportunity. Right. And so I want you to just pause for a moment and consider, what is it that you think that you're doing for other people? And it feels like this is the right thing for me to be doing, but you're actually forgetting about yourself. What I have discovered is that I need rest. And this is something that I've discovered only within the last year. I've been such an ambitious, uh, you know, just having lots of projects all over the place and able to execute on those projects. And to what end? We have spoken about that on the show so many times. What is enough? To what end? And I started to realize that it's taking its toll on my body, on every single part of me, and including, am I really hearing myself? I've noticed that I've been more disconnected, and maybe you sense that also. So if you are feeling more disconnected, one of these things that we want to do is like tap in and think, like, am I taking some time for myself, or am I telling myself stories that I need to always go, 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 go? I was having lunch with a friend the other day, and that is a go, 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 go friend. And it actually really hit me that I've made some transitions in life, and I believe they're very healthy transitions. Our adrenal glands and our entire body, which I am not the expert on, which is why I bring the experts on the show. But I mean, our bodies aren't designed to just be in a constant state of go. We need periods of rest so that we can connect with ourselves and get back into our skin. After my dad died, I actually went to yoga classes and I called it my passive active because it definitely gave me a really great workout. And yet at the same time, I felt like it was nourishing my soul. I just felt like I could decompress emotionally and spiritually. And yet I could still get the release physiologically of stress and such. So it's just learning about where can I find these pockets where I can just nurture myself so that I can hear myself and be in line with myself. Sometimes a couple more ideas before we move on from like our struggles to hearing ourselves. I am going to get into some like how we are going to reconnect with ourselves, and I've given you a few ideas already. I'm kind of weaving some of them in, but we'll dive into it in a deep way in just a moment. I want you to consider also another reason why we struggle to hear ourselves is because we might be afraid of what we might hear. So what if you actually reconnect with yourself and it's really painful? What if you're reconnecting with yourself and it is drawing you into something completely different that you've never experienced? So, when we're in that state of go, go, go and being disconnected from our inner voice, we can find ourselves in a situation where our feelings are actually dulled or numb, or maybe we can't even access our feelings. And so sometimes when we reconnect, it can actually be a little bit overwhelming because it's feeling again. It reminds me of at the Conscious Investor Growth Summit in 2024, we did the cold plunge. By the way, we'll do it again this year. And at the cold plunge, the water was all of maybe 34 degrees. I mean, there was ice in different parts of the water. And that it was so cold. It was so, so, so cold. And I'm not a cold plunger. We all know this. So I go in and I do the plunge. I only made it 60 seconds. I'm not going to pretend anything here. I respect people who cold plunge. And so I was proud of myself. I made it 60 seconds. And then I got to go into the resort and get in the swimming pool. And when I put my feet in the swimming pool and the feeling was coming back into my extremities, it felt like needles. It hurt. It was excruciating. Sometimes we are so disconnected from ourselves that when we start to feel again, it can actually be really, really excruciating because now we're feeling and we're not used to that. And so I just want to prepare you. Like sometimes we don't even want to talk to the inner voice. We don't even want to be reconnected because it's like, that could be really painful. I'm not sure what I'm going to discover. And we might discover something like, oh my gosh, I'm totally around the wrong peer group. Maybe you're around a peer group and it's like they go out to happy hour after work every night and you're joining them and it's all gossip and just trash talk and people maybe over consuming and it's just not a healthy situation. And maybe you have that realization when you hear that inner voice and you're like, this is not the healthiest like group of people for me to be around. It could also be that, whoa, I need to make a geographic move. The other day, I was driving down and I had all of the music. I just drove down in a very still, quiet car. I was by myself. And what I was doing was I was praying, I was talking to God, and I was just trying to be reconnecting with myself in the stillness of this really early morning drive to a meeting. And in that moment, it made me realize I had the revelation. It was solidifying, yeah, we are supposed to move geographically. Yes, that is true. And I was able to see a lot of the reasons why we were supposed to be moving. And so when we're willing to get still, when we're willing to get quiet, we can find some really exciting things also. So for me, moving is so exciting. I think I'll have more energy because I won't be traveling as much and I'll be able to be around a lot of the people that I collaborate with, and it'll just simplify a lot of life for my entire family. That's super exciting. And come on, let's just be real. The beach. The beach in North Idaho, right there. I mean, that kind of sells me. Mountain biking. I have mountain biking right here. Snowboarding. I mean, so we have some fun things also that are really exciting. We're like, oh gosh, this is gonna be so exciting when we move. I can't wait. So sometimes we might be afraid, and initially that transition of the friend group or the geography or the career or some other relationships, whatever those transitions are, sometimes initially it's a little bit overwhelming. It might be a little scary, but when you step into that, you're going to gain that reward. It's going to be so worth it. Sometimes we can just simply be disconnected from our wishes, and I touched on this, but I really want to just remind you that if we have been hitting that override switch for years, and conscious investor, let's be real, so many of us hit that override button just day after day after day, and it just becomes part of the routine, part of the habit. And instead of being subordinate for me to God and saying like, wow, what are we doing today, I can just hit that override button. And we have our areas where we tend to do that, and we lose sight of our priorities. And so that right there can just really lead to a deep disconnect from the greater things that we want to accomplish in the world. So let's talk about, I think we're all clear on a lot of the reasons why we can be disconnected. I'd love to hear from you. What are the reasons that you've discovered for yourself as to why you're disconnected from your inner voice? I'd love to hear if there's something you'd like to add, or something that really resonated with you. Let me know. We'll drop an email down in the bottom. And if you email me, I will email you back. Okay. So this isn't just a one way street. All right. So let's talk about reconnecting with our inner voice. Remember, I just mentioned how I was driving in my car and the other day, and I was in the stillness of the car. I normally listen to audiobooks or podcasts or music or something, and I didn't. I just allowed the quiet hum of the road going, on the wheels and stuff. I just let it be. And I breathed. And I just evaluated myself. So, what I was doing was I was really just trying to be active. I was trying to be actively listening to what it was that was going on inside of me. A lot of times we're passively listening, and it's like we're just waiting for an answer, but we can actually be actively listening and actively seeking. In fact, one of the questions I asked myself as I was driving down, and I don't think I'm alone, but you can point fingers and say, "Oh, that's just you, Jules." Okay. But the reality is that I was going through just some of the complications and challenges. There are always complications and challenges happening in life. If there aren't, I don't know what you're doing. Because when you're pushing the limits, when you're really stepping into your potential that God created you for, you're going to face complications and challenges. So here I am, and I start like just talking with God about like, there's this and this and this. And I wasn't complaining about it. There is a difference. We can acknowledge what's taking place without whining and complaining. I was just acknowledging like what was going on. And then I actually heard myself like say, stop. And I heard myself ask a question. Now, I'm not saying I heard myself like audible, like voice outside, asking me a question. No, but I like internally, there was a question that arose. And that question was, what do you want? So a lot of times we will suppress our voice. And if we're willing to position ourselves into a quiet, still setting and actually just be open to listening and actively seeking, like, what are the questions that I should be asking? What is actually going on here? There is this tremendous opportunity. In fact, that was when I realized, when I asked that question, "What do I want?" It led me down that and gave so much clarity as to why we are moving south and the benefits of that. So if you've made a big geographical move, conscious investor, you know that especially if you've lived somewhere for a long time, and where I live right now is the longest I've ever lived anywhere as an adult, ever. Like ever. So there's an emotional, there's a relationship with our home, with our kids growing up here, with our geography, with our friends, with our community, everything. And so, I have to give myself some space to process all of that. Okay. Our inner voice is never going to be shouting at us. It's just going to wait till we're willing to get a little bit quiet and willing to listen and ask, like, hey, what's going on? What do I really want? What do I need to be thinking about right now? So I want you to remember that those little nudges that we have, I've learned, and I don't take it for granted, but I've learned, like, when I heard that, what do you want? Like, not what's going on, not all the chaos, not all of that, but what do I want? Learning to listen to those questions. It's something that is learned. And so if you haven't been doing this for a long time, I want you to just give yourself some space, breathe, relax, and then I want you to think about, just what's that little nudge? It might seem random. It might be a persistent thought. It might be just like, oh, I really want to do this, right? But I want you to, like, just be very, very aware of those things, because those are just the little beacons along the trail of life that are going to lead and guide you and help you step into the fullness of who you're created to be. Like, God doesn't just abandon us here on planet Earth, like, to figure it out on our own. And when we learn how to do some of that co-creating and how to listen and look for those little beacons, a whole new world opens up. All right. I'm going to give you just a few practical tips, things that you can do right now. Even if you are washing dishes on the treadmill, driving your car, whatever it is that you're doing, if you're not hands-free, this is okay. The first thing I want you to do is I want to teach you a breathing exercise. I did this in one of my group coaching groups recently, and it was so powerful, and it's so simple. Everybody in the group, I shouldn't say everybody, but like one person in particular, but people echoed this, but said, I have been using this ever since we learned this. This is amazing. You should teach this from the very beginning of the group coaching groups, so that this is a tool in the toolbox. But I want you to teach you to breathe. And I'm going to teach you two techniques, but and there are people that are out there on podcasts and such and YouTube that will guide you through so many different types of breath work. Okay. So this is not unique to me, and I am not the massive guru on breath work and such, but I do know a couple of things and it will help you out if you're willing to try it. The first one we'll try is called 4-4-4. So what this is like, breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you don't have to count. Like, I don't like it when people count for the breath work, by the way. For me, I like to do my own counting, and then you release it through your mouth for 4 seconds. Okay. So it would kind of go like this. It would go and I'm not doing it justice, but I want to just like give you an idea. I don't know if you can actually hear that super great on the podcast, but if you're over on YouTube, you got to see it. And when you are breathing out, when you're exhaling through your mouth, one of the things you want to do is you just want to really push that breath out. So I am not doing it justice on this. Maybe I'll do it a little more justice on this next one. So if you are doing the 4-4-4, this is great if you need a little energy, but you need to stay calm at the same time. But it's a little bit invigorating. Now, the one that I love, this next one. It is called 4-7-8. And so if you understand 4-4-4 is like breathe in, hold, breathe out. Well, 4-7-8 is still the same breathe in, hold, breathe out. And this particular breathwork exercise makes my whole body feel so relaxed. I'm cautious about doing this on the podcast because I might want to just kick back in the chair over there and relax. But what we're going to do is breathe in for 4, right? So hold it for 7 and then breathe out for 8. For me, that breath work out where the 8, it just forces me, it pushes me to have to push more air out. And just remember, our air in our lungs gets stale. And so it's really good to push that air out. So one of the practical steps, as silly as it may sound, to connect back with your inner voice is to simply connect with your breath work. Start breathing and you're going to notice that you'll notice more presence. We really take it for granted that our breath work, we just think, oh, it just happens. And so we don't really think about it. And a lot of people, like a lot of us, aren't breathing correctly. I tend to breathe through my upper chest versus through my diaphragm and such. And so, like, just learning things about yourself is going to actually reconnect you with your inner voice. Another way that you can reconnect with your inner voice is through habit sampling. And so, some of these things that you could do that would allow an environment for you to reconnect with that inner voice is you I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm taking it for granted that we've talked about habit sampling on past episodes, but just briefly, habit sampling is when we don't marry ourselves to a habit. We simply say, this sounds interesting. I'm going to sample this for a short period of time and see if it's trending in the direction that I want to go in. And if it is, then I'm going to elongate my sample. I'm going to do a deluxe sample size. And then if it's really great at that point, I might want to make this as like a normal habit in my entire life. A lot of times we want to simply jump into habits and, we want to get our habit tracker out and we want to just commit to that habit. We're going to do this every single day. And it's actually not aligned to us. So create some habit samples for yourself, connecting with our inner voice. That could look like literally sitting still for 5 minutes each day for a week. Come on now. I know that that would be challenging for you, conscious investor. That means no TV, no app, no scrolling, just sitting still. Watch out the window, sit on a chair outside in the backyard or on your porch, but sitting still 5 minutes. That could be a habit that you sample that allows you to just simply reconnect with your inner voice. Oftentimes, though, we'll start connecting with our environment, our external environment, before we start connecting with our internal environment. And that's okay. We want to start that whole connection process. We can connect with ourselves through journaling. So maybe you want to sample journaling. You don't want to commit to writing in that journal every day, but maybe I could commit to doing this for a week and seeing what that reveals to me in my internal landscape and how it reconnects me. We've heard Jessica D'Angelo on the podcast already. She has the Hike 31 challenge. So maybe you want to sign up for that so you have some outside accountability. That's more of a deluxe sample because it's 31 days. But, hey, go out, go for a walk and get that movement, get the blood flowing. And no tech, no AirPods in those ears, nothing whatsoever. It's just you out walking in nature. So these are just some ways that we can reconnect with ourselves. Okay. And then we spoke about this on our last mindset podcast episode. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it, but I want you to just be aware of your nervous system. It runs our whole body. Our brain gets so much attention, but our brain is actually like not the star of the show because it's our whole nervous system that runs throughout our body that sends the information up to the brain. And so we want to just simply be aware of what is going on with our body. All right. Conscious investor, when you are connected, when you can hear yourself above the noise in the world, above all the poles of work, of family, of community, of everything that's pulling us in so many different directions, when we can hear ourselves, we have such a powerful opportunity to contribute powerfully in the world the way we were created to. Your DNA is your unique, once in a lifetime, once in history's timeline opportunity to live into that purpose, into that calling and into your contribution. And we don't want to miss out on that. That is where fulfillment and satisfaction are birthed and take place. I'm going to remind you, life is a limited time offer. I know that can seem really harsh, but I want you to let that sink in and live each day knowing this is a blessing. It is a gift. It is for you, and it is for you to do something really awesome and great in the world. Conscious investor, I'd love it if you let me know how this resonates with you. So you can, do that by leaving a comment on the platform that you're on, depending on your platform, or you can shoot me an email directly, link down in comments. And please feel free, if this resonates with you, please rate it, review it, and share it around so that we can support other people in leveling up. I appreciate you, conscious investor. Until next time, live in the fullness of who you are created to be.